Zooey Mama, the April season of Marvel Snap is upon us. It's coming around the corner. We have the Zeros to Heroes season, and some of these new cards are absolutely insane. We've got the Season Pass card, who's going to be Baron Zemo, and then we've got 5 other cards coming out that season. So we're getting 6 new cards this next month, and it's going to be crazy. So I'm going to cover everything we have from data mines, the new cards, their stats, their abilities, and the spotlight caches they are in. Okay, now this is just from data mines. We could see some small changes from now to when the cards are released, specifically their stat and power changes. And we might even see some minor ability changes, especially for the ones that are coming out a bit later in the month. And the spotlights are actually not from a data mine. Second Dinner has blocked data mining for spotlight caches. Okay, but the websites like Snap.fan, Marvel Snap Zone, they are killing it. They're helping us out. They are looking at the dates that some new variants for Series 4 and Series 5 cards are coming out and lining that up to the spotlight schedule to figure out what the spotlight caches are ahead of time, even though they're not getting data mines for it. So big props to them. I'm giving you the most up-to-date information we have, but just keep in mind it is data mined, so it is subject to change. But that's enough talking. Let's get into these crazy cards. So first up, we have our Season Pass card, Baron Zemo. The season starts April 2nd. Baron Zemo is a 3-cost, 4-powered card with the ability, on reveal, recruit the lowest cost card from your opponent's deck to your side of this location. Now, we haven't seen the text recruit before. I believe it means steal. Okay, it's not copy. You will actually take the card from your opponent's deck and play it on your side. So if the lowest cost card in your opponent's deck, say was Iceman, Baron Zemo takes that Iceman out, he plays it on your side right next to him, and Iceman would trigger, his on reveal ability, hit a card in your opponent's hand. And now you have this 1/2 next to Baron Zemo. So this new ability is very interesting. It does align with the recent change to Yondu's text, where Yondu now kills the lowest cost card in your opponent's deck. So presumably you'll want to do Yondu turn 1, kill the lowest cost card in their deck, and then come around to Baron Zemo. You're now maybe pulling a higher cost card. I mean, if the lowest cost card in your opponent's deck is a 2 or 3 cost card, Baron Zemo's pulling that. It's possible he's a 3/4 that's just generating a free 3-cost card, okay? And it's not random. That's very important. A card like Loki is so good, not because he's giving you random cards at a discount. He's giving you your opponent's cards at a discount. And presumably your opponent is trying to play some pretty good cards to beat you. So getting a card from your opponent's deck is significantly better than getting a random card. And we might even see like a new mill archetype, because he is removing it from their deck. So you can do Yondu turn 1, Cables turn 2, Baron Zemo turn 3, Gladiator turn 4, or vice versa. You can really mill your opponent. Okay, just remove everything from their deck. By turns 5 or 6, they won't have anything left to draw. So very interesting Season Pass card. Shown here is the Baron Zemo variant that you will get with level 50 of the season cache if you did go ahead and buy the pass. And it's a pretty nice variant. I kind of like the different style. I do think I like it more than the base art. In terms of being fun, I think he's very fun. Okay, he's got everything. Okay, he's a 3/4. That's a good stat line. He's pulling something from your opponent's deck. That's already fun. It's got, RNG element. You don't know what you're going to get, and you're stealing something from your opponent. And then he's playing it at the same time. So he's a 3/4 that's also playing something else. But again, it's kind of got this RNG element. It's not like Brood or Mr. Sinister where you know what they're going to spawn. It's really interesting. And we might have a new mill archetype, which, by the way, when I say mill, that's just a term for getting rid of the cards in your opponent's deck, okay, to where they can't draw anything. It's just called getting milled. I think it originates from Magic the Gathering. I don't know, but I think he's very fun. In terms of being flexible, I think he's pretty flexible. Now, there are specific decks where he's going to get more value, but technically you could just put him in like anything, right? He doesn't need synergy. In terms of being competitive, I think he's okay. He's not horrible. As a baseline, a 3/4 that's generating a 1-cost card from a selected pool is good. It's better than Shanna. Shanna is a bit risky. You might get Ebony Maw, you might get Zero. Baron will rarely give you like a really bad 1-cost card. And, you know, you could get something bigger. He's got a decent floor. The reason I say it's not good or amazing is 3 cost. While he can go in any deck, you know, 3 cost is a big commitment. And unless Baron Zemo is pulling something with 4 power or bigger, you're going to get more power on the board just playing Gladiator. And you're not taking up 2 spaces. I don't think he's going to be insane, okay? I think he's going to be okay. Maybe good. We'll have to see, you know, how it fares closer leading to the season. But I think for now, he's at a good spot, but definitely weaker than Hope Summers is my guess. All right, next up, we've got the Red Hulk, and this card just looks awesome. Okay, he's coming out in Spotlights the very first week of the April season, alongside Sebastian Shaw and Echo. Now, Echo's Series 4, Sebastian Shaw is Series 5, but he's not the strongest, so definitely a bit of a weaker Spotlight cache, but we do have some cool variants in here that may be interesting to you. Red Hulk is going to be Series 5, 6 cost card, 10 power, with the ability when your opponent ends a turn with unspent energy, plus 4 power if Red Hulk is in your hand or on the board. So this is like the opposite of the Evolved Hulk. So when you have the Hulk in a high evolutionary deck, right, he gets plus 2 power when you don't spend energy. Of course, it's easy to plan what you do. It's hard to plan what your opponent does. So Red Hulk will probably trigger less often, but each time it does, each time your opponent floats at least 1 energy a turn, he's getting plus 4 power. That's very strong. I mean, as a base, he's 6'10", but if you had him at the start of the game, your opponent doesn't play a 1-cost card, at least once Thanos is out of the meta, or at least not busted. He becomes a 6'14" by turn 2. If your opponent floats 1 on turns 4 or 5, which is pretty common, he's a 6'18", so 2 shy of Infinite, around the base size of Blob. That's pretty good, okay? He's very interesting. Again, it's really based on what your opponent's doing. I don't think there's anything in the game where you can help your opponent float energy, just like give them extra energy that they won't spend. There's no real way to help him trigger. It does kind of depend on what your opponent's playing, but very interesting. Again, kind of the opposite of Evolved Hulk, which I think is pretty cool. So here's the Spotlight variant, which I think is just incredible. I think this one's super cool. It's a bit artistic, but he still looks, you know, crazy, powerful, angry. In terms of being fun, no. I think he has fun artwork. I think he looks cool. He's just a big stat stick. We've seen a lot of them in the game recently. They've been pretty strong, but it's pretty boring. Just slapping down a Obsidian or Mockingbird or Red Hulk. So not too much in terms of fun. And again, you can't even try and trigger him more like you do when you're playing a high Evo deck and you purposely skip turns or, you know, have unspent energy. It's kind of just what your opponent's doing. So very little interaction for you. In terms of being flexible, yeah, again, he doesn't really synergize with anything specifically that you're putting in your deck. It's pretty much like what your opponent's doing. So if you're playing against someone, maybe the meta's filled with like discard or something that's more combo heavy, that it's all about a specific card and not spending all of your energy, he may just be a consistent 6'18" or even 6'22". In that case, you can just put him in any deck, kind of like Blob. Like old Blob or even current Blob, you know, just a nice big stat stick. In terms of being competitive, I think he's good. He's not amazing. He's definitely not as strong as Blob was upon release. I mean, Blob was gained to like 30, 40 plus power, but Blob was also doing that very consistently no matter when you drew him. If you draw Red Hulk on turn 6, he's a 6'10", and if your opponent spends all their energy that turn, he's going to stay a 6'10". His floor is a 6'10". It's possible that's all he is. But if you draw him early, he could get bigger. And again, it might be a bit of power creep on Infinite again, but not as big as we've seen already. Not as big as Blob. I don't think he breaks the game, but I think he's just another big powerhouse that goes into any deck. And there are kind of a lot of them now. So he doesn't really stand out to me, and that's also kind of why he's boring. But that's my early thoughts on Red Hulk. Next up, we have USA Agent, who's coming out on April 9th. He's going to be in spotlights with Mirage and Jeff. Mirage, Series 4, not super good or needed. Jeff, Series 5, everybody loves Jeff. He's super strong. If you don't have him, now's a great time to get him. But look at these variants. These are some killer variants this week. I love all 3 of these. This is amazing, okay? Now talk about US Agent. He is a 2-cost, 2-power card with the ongoing ability that's basically like the opposite of Man-Thing. It's 4, 5, and 6 cards here have -3 power. Now, Man-Thing is a 4-5 that gives -2 power to 1, 2, and 3 cost cards. US Agent is hitting the higher end of that spectrum. He's hitting the 4, 5, and 6 costs, the big boys, but he's giving them -3, and he's way cheaper. Man-Thing is a 4-5, US Agent is a 2-2. And obviously, your opponent's probably not playing as many of these cards in a single lane, but if Zabu rotates back into meta, which he will, he always does, you could easily be hitting 2 or sometimes 3 cards with him. If US Agent hits 1 card, he's essentially a 2-5. Okay, if your opponent has like 1 card that he can reduce the power of, he's a 2-5, that's solid. If he hits 2 cards, he's a 2-8, and that's already great value. If you could just play a vanilla 2-8 and Snap, you would. Okay, that's great value. If he hits 3 or more, it's like busted value in that game. In that specific scenario, his value is just through the roof, okay, if he becomes like a 2-11. So he is very good in that sense. Again, it might kind of depend on the meta, but I think just from a stat line alone, he's a better Man-Thing. You want to run him with Luke Cage. Make sure you don't hit your own things, but you could also just put him in Silver Surfer. I mean, Silver Surfer, you just have to play Sarah in a different lane. All of your other cards cost 3, and you want something to play on turn 2, have something on the board, so you just play US Agent turn 2, play a bunch of 3 costs, Sarah in a different lane, and US Agent could give you a ton of value. So here's a close-up of his Spotlight variant, which I think also just looks awesome. We've got some great variants this month. I'm absolutely loving it. In terms of being fun, you know, I think he's okay. Not the most boring. He is interacting with your opponent's cards. You may hold him. Maybe you want to play him like on turn 5 where your opponent has played like some bigger things, because you actually see where they've played their bigger cards. Or maybe you do like Goose in the left lane, US Agent in the middle lane, you know, something kind of like that. In terms of being flexible, yeah, he's okay. You basically need to run him with Luke Cage or in a deck where you don't have many cards that cost 4 or higher. Again, I mentioned Silver Surfer. You could do like a Sarah deck, Bounce deck, Hit Monkey. There's a few options, but if you're doing anything with just decent power, mid-range, or expensive deck, you are going to need Luke Cage. So it's okay, but you do need to build around him or put him in kind of specific decks. In terms of being competitive, you know, I think he's good. Again, just being a 2-cost card, very flexible, and he can generate great power. And I mean, 4, 5, and 6, like, that can give you some value, okay? He's going to hit in Iron Man. He's going to hit a Darkhawk. He's going to just hit a lot of big stuff. He could hit Man-Thing if your opponent is actually playing Man-Thing. You know, he definitely has some good targets out there that can ruin your opponent's day, and he could even come down on turn 6. There are not that many 2-cost cards who you would plan to play on turn 6, but you can slap him down, just add a ton of power on the final turn. You could even play him with ongoing synergy. Okay, you could hit him with Spectrum, double him up with Onslaught, do whatever you want. He has a nice, powerful 2-cost ongoing guard. Next up, we've got Red Guardian. He's coming out April 16th, going to be in spotlights with Lady Deathstrike and High Evolutionary. So we have another one of these, you know, Lady Deathstrike, pretty weak, skippable card, you don't need it, but then paired with High Evolutionary, who's very strong. So a lot of these weeks have like one spotlight card that's like really a standout. If you don't have it, you probably want to chase after it because it's so good, and that's High Evo here, but I do really like this Lady Deathstrike variant, so I'm about that. Now, Red Guardian, he's a 3-cost, 3-powered card, similar to like the Captain America stat line, with the on-reveal ability to afflict the lowest powered enemy card here with -2 power and remove its text. Man, remove its text is absolutely killer. You're essentially just like silencing a card. This is like removal, okay? The card's not dead, But I mean, if your opponent had Zabu on turn 2, which a lot of decks just play Zabu on turn 2, and you play Red Guardian, they now have a 2-0 Zabu with no ability. You essentially killed that card and left a rock. Okay, he still takes up space on their board, which is good for you. So, very interesting here. We don't really have much general removal in the game. When you think of cards that remove other cards, you think of Shang-Chi. He's so good, very targeted, but he's only targeting cards that have 10 or more power. Lady Deathstrike, not super good, but she is targeted, only hitting cards less power than hers. Gambit can hit anything, but Gambit is random. Red Guardian can hit any card, and he's not random. So here is Red Guardian's Spotlight variant. Another banger. I gotta say, this is amazing. In terms of being fun, I think it's pretty fun. Again, he's doing multiple things. He's giving something minus power. He's removing an ability. In terms of being flexible, yeah, he's flexible. Okay, I talked about a card like Baron Zemo you can just play in any deck. Same thing with Red Guardian. If Zabu's in the meta, or Ravana Renslayer if they're common, you just play Red Guardian. He hits Nebula. That's great. He just completely nullified Nebula. And it doesn't need to be specific. Again, you don't need to have Killmonger and then you run into 2-cost cards and now you can't do anything. No, he can hit any one card. You can even play Absorbing Man after him to hit a card in a different lane. I mean, very powerful ability. He's doing multiple things. I love it. In terms of being competitive, I think he's good. He's on the borderline for me of being amazing, okay? As we get closer to his release and I do my individual video for him, depending on how he looks, if they haven't, lowered his power, I might move him into the amazing category because I think this is really powerful. Again, he's doing two things. He's giving it minus power and he's silencing it. And either one of those things could just shut down some cards. So, and again, Iron Man's dead. he just absolutely wrecks Iron Man. He wrecks Morbius. He wrecks Dracula. Those cards are so hard to deal with, okay, because no one's running Lady Deathstrike. So those cards are so hard to deal with. Red Guardian is way more flexible than Lady Deathstrike, so you can actually run him. And when you do run into an Iron Man or Morbius or Dracula, you can put in some work. It's going to be crazy. So I think Red Guardian, he's good, if not great or amazing. He's got real potential. Next up, we've got White Widow, who comes out April 23rd alongside Snowguard and Nico. Snowguard, she's a solid card, pretty flexible, and Nico's like the best, if not just one of the best, 1-cost cards in the game. So pretty solid Spotlight cash here. White Widow is a 2-cost, 2-power card with the on reveal ability to add a Widow's Kiss to your opponent's side of the location. Okay, so she's going to add this Widow's Kiss to your opponent's side of the board. A Widow's Kiss is a 0/0 card. With the ongoing ability, this has a -4 power. So when you first spawn there, it's a 0 -4 on your opponent's side of the board. Kind of like a goblin, but it's a 0 -4 goblin. And then disable this ability if your side of this location is full. So you play White Widow. I'm just going to clarify this because there's been some confusion about how that disable works, whose board has to be full. You play White Widow, you essentially send this 0 -4 goblin to your opponent's side of the board, of that location. Okay, that's now their card. So that ongoing ability is on their side. So for your opponent, they have this 0 -4 Widow's Kiss on their side. They need to fill that location in order to make that Widow's Kiss a 0/0. Okay, if they don't fill it, if they just end, with 2 or 3 cards on that location, that Widow's Kiss is going to be a 0 -4. Okay, so very interesting card. We don't really have too many cards like this, and she kind of fills this empty spot in Junk and Clog for multiple reasons. First of all, yeah, she's obviously like Black Widow. Black Widow adds the Widow's Bite to your opponent's hand. They have to play it if they want to keep drawing cards. White Widow says, let's skip that step. I'm going to play it straight on their side of the board. It's not going to go to the hand and then they have to play it. It's going straight to their side of the board. But your opponent still has to interact with it. Okay, when you play Debris, you give your opponent rocks. When you play Nihilus and you give them the Hood or the Void, like you're sending them crap. But they don't have to do anything with it once it's there. Like, it doesn't matter unless they can, destroy it. With White Widow, you're sending them something, Okay, even if they do, nullify it, it's like sending them a rock. You're sending them something, and then you're also kind of forcing them to play there, right? She's kind of combining like Black Widow and Jean Grey, because you're giving them crap and you're making them play on that crap. Okay. All right, so here's a close-up of White Widow's basic art. Actually, I got them switched around. So the art on the last slide was her variant, her Spotlight Cash variant. This one is her base art. Okay, I do like her Spotlight one. It's pretty nice. Now, in terms of being fun, I think she's fun. I personally enjoy clog decks. I enjoy junk. Even if you don't, though, she's interesting. She's doing something new. Okay, again, she's kind of combining the aspect of like Jean Grey and Black Widow, maybe even like a Green Goblin. So very interesting. And if you can move your opponent's card away on the last turn, maybe you played Cannonball or even Stegron or Spider-Man, you now kind of guarantee that Widow's Kiss is a -4 power. So there's some tricky things you can do there as well. In terms of being flexible, not really. No, you need to play her in junk or clog. Maybe Lockdown. You could play her and Professor X the lane before your opponent can fill it, but pretty stuck to that archetype. Because if you can't, she's a 2/2, right? If you don't do anything funny with Widow's Kiss and moving their card away, and they fill it up, she's a 2/2 that gave your opponent a rock, and that's not something you want to put into every deck. In terms of being competitive, I think she's okay. Again, her floor is kind of low. It's just a 2/2 that gives your opponent a rock. Would people play that in clog? I could see you playing it in clog. Generally, you wouldn't want to play like Hazmat on turn 2. Again, being a 2-cost card is actually good now because Black Widow and Viper have moved away from that slot for clog or junk decks. But I think she's okay. I don't think she's amazing. Her ceiling isn't super high. At most, she's like a 2-cost 6-power card that also fills up your spot, a spot on your opponent's side of the board, which is strong. That's a good ceiling. It's not incredible though. So I think she's okay, but I personally am very excited for her. And last but certainly not least, because I think this card might be absolutely busted, is Valentina. Valentina is a 2-cost 2-power card with the on reveal ability to add a random 6-cost card to your hand. Give it -2 cost and -3 power. You play here on turn 2 and you get a random 6-cost card. Now it's only going to cost 2 less, so it's going to cost 4, and it's going to lose 3 power. But if you play Luke Cage right after Valentina on turn 3, you don't have to worry about that -3 power. So then you just have a 4-cost, 6-cost card. You have a 6-cost card that costs 4. That's kind of just a huge energy treat. I mean, you could do Valentina turn 2, Luke Cage turn 3, 6-cost card turn 4. That's crazy. Now, there is randomness here, obviously. Sometimes you're going to get Destroyer. Sometimes you're going to get Arnim Zola. I don't think you will get Agatha. I think they will remove Agatha from the pool. They remove her from other location pools like the Raft and other ones that generate random cards because they don't want you getting Agatha. Sometimes you'll get a card like Null, but you won't be playing Destroy. Okay, so there are some misses. But if she doesn't miss, and especially if you play Luke Cage, you're just getting something really big for 4, and you're starting this ramp on turn 2. I mean, after Valentina, you could still play Hope Summers. You could still play like a Corvus Glaive. You could play her in a deck that's still ramping out other things. And you just have so many ramp options now. And it's a random card. I mean, that's going to help out even with Mockingbird. But if you do hit a Doctor Doom or a Giganto, you have a 4/14 Giganto, or anything that's big, Hulk, Red Hulk, Magneto, you get for 4, that's busted territory. So here is Valentina's Spotlight Cash variant. It's kind of cool. It's a nice action pose. In terms of being fun, I think she's pretty fun. Huge RNG element. Sometimes you get something useless, in which case you can just keep it in hand. In terms of being flexible, I think she's pretty flexible. Okay, you can put her in any deck. She might become a general 2-cost card that you just play, and if you get lucky, you might just be like guaranteed to win that game, right? You get lucky, but you don't have to commit your whole deck to luck, like a Pixie or Mr. Negative. You don't have to commit your whole deck to something like that. You just play one card. If it works, it works. If it doesn't, you played a 2/2. Not the worst. In terms of being competitive, yeah, Yeah, I think she's amazing. I really do. I would not be surprised if they slightly tweak her before she comes out. Maybe make her a 3-cost card, which I think would work well. You can play her on 3, the 6-cost card on 4. You don't get to sneak in Luke Cage there. Or you make her give like -1 cost and, you know, -2 power or something. So there's going to be many scenarios and many clips where she is just overpowered in the situation and wins you the game. So I think she's probably the strongest card coming out in April by what we have from the data mines. So those are my early predictions of the April season for Marvel Snap, Zeros to Heroes. And just a reminder that the cards that I'm really keeping an eye on the most are Baron Zemo, Red Guardian, and Valentina. Let me know what you think. Let me know which of these cards you're most excited for, which of those spotlight weeks or variants you're most excited for, and if you think I'm just flat out wrong on any of my very early predictions. So until then, stay positive. I'll see you next time.